The east tunnel did not lead us upward. It bent under the city like a vein the city had forgotten to close. Broken blue lights blinked along the wall. Walter's breathing became the only clock. He leaned on Irene at first, then on me when pride failed him. His blood had stopped spreading, but his face had turned the color of old paper. "The clinic," he said, "has a red curtain behind a noodle shop." "You're giving directions while bleeding?" Irene asked. "I am a scholar. Useless facts keep me alive." We reached a service hatch. Irene opened it with a code she did not explain. Warm air came through first, carrying ginger, oil, rain, and human voices. Light rain, soft against metal awnings. We climbed to the back room of a noodle shop where steam clouded the ceiling. An old woman looked at Irene, then at Walter, and pushed aside a red curtain without asking a question. Behind it was a clinic no larger than a storage room. Warm lamps hung over a metal table. Shelves held sealed bandages, old monitors, and black market implants. We laid Walter down. He grabbed my wrist before I could step back. "Do not let them take the light core," he said. "I know. No, you know that it matters. You do not yet know why." "Then stay alive and tell me." The doctor came in wearing a kitchen apron over surgical gloves. He gave Walter one look and said, "He talks too much to be dying." Irene stood near the table while the doctor worked. Her pistol was lowered, but still in her hand. Walter's blood had dried on her sleeve. Under the warm lamps, I saw what the tunnel had hidden. She was afraid. Not weak. Afraid in the controlled way of someone who had learned to fold fear into usefulness. "You know Foster," I said. Her eyes moved to the curtain. That was answer enough. The doctor sealed Walter's wound with a thin strip of blue light. Walter's jaw tightened, but he did not cry out. "The thief took the trace fragment," Irene said. "What else did you keep from us?" Walter opened both eyes. "Too much." He nodded toward his satchel. "Left pocket." I found the data strip wrapped in temple cloth. Beneath it was a cracked recording wafer. "My father?" I asked. Walter's face softened. 3 nights before he vanished. Vanished. Not died. The word passed through the room quietly, but every part of me heard it. The doctor connected the wafer to a small display. Static filled the screen. Then my father appeared. Not clearly. Half his face was broken by interference, but it was him. Ken Hayabusa stood in a room of white light and hard shadows. He looked older than I remembered, but younger than the dead man I had imagined. "Walter," Ken said through the static, "if this reaches you, Foster has lost control of the containment project." The name turned the room cold. "The light must stay away from the shadow until the black moon passes. If I fail, send Ryu west only if there is no other choice." My breath stopped. Only if there is no other choice. The old bitterness rose fast. I had crossed an ocean not because he wanted me, but because the world had run out of people. Then Ken spoke again. "If my son hears this one day, tell him." The recording tore open into static. I stepped closer. "Tell him what?" Ken's face returned for less than a second. "Tell him I did not leave because I stopped loving him." The wafer burned white and died. No one spoke. Outside the red curtain, rain ticked against the shop sign. Somewhere above us, the city continued pretending it was ordinary. The words had entered me, but they had not settled. They moved around the old wound without knowing where to land. Walter looked smaller on the table. "Ken believed enemies were watching every blood relation. After your mother died, he feared they would use you to break him. So he chose for me." "Yes!" "And that is supposed to heal it?" "No," Walter said. "Truth does not heal by arriving. It only gives the wound a name." I hated him then, not because he was wrong, because he might not be. The light core pulsed inside the steel container. The dead screen flickered again, not with Ken's face, but with a map. Lines unfolded under the city, ending at one bright point beneath a corporate grid station. "The first gate," Walter said, "below the central power spine. Foster's tower sits above the access authority." I looked at Irene. "You can't reach the gate without passing through Foster," she said, "and you can get me to him." "I can get you into the building." That is not what I asked. No, she said, it never is. Walter drew one careful breath. The good morning shift change. Take the light core. Leave me here. No, Irene said. Walter smiled faintly. My dear, I am currently more burden than wisdom. I picked up the steel container. For the first time since arriving in the city, my father's command did not feel like a chain. It felt like a hand reaching from a place I still did not know how to forgive. The rain thinned outside. Night held to the windows, but somewhere beyond the towers, morning had already begun preparing its light. I closed the sword case latch. Then we go to Foster, I said. Morning made the city look innocent. That was its first lie. The rain had stopped before we left the noodle shop. Water still clung to the awnings and wires, but the sky above the towers had cleared into a hard white brightness. People returned to the streets as if the night had not happened. Office workers stepped around puddles. Delivery drones drifted between buildings. A child held a paper cup with both hands and watched steam rise from it like it was something holy. Walter stayed behind the red curtain. The doctor had given him enough medicine to sleep, but not enough to silence him. As we left, he caught my sleeve and whispered, "Do not mistake access for trust." I looked at Irene when he said it. She pretended not to notice. Now she walked beside me through the morning crowd, gray coat buttoned, face calm, dried blood hidden under one folded cuff. She had cleaned her hands. I had not forgotten what had been on them. Foster's tower stood above the central district like a blade pushed through glass. It had no sign. It did not need one. Every camera in the surrounding blocks turned a little slower when we approached. Security gates opened before Irene touched them. Men in dark suits looked at my sword case, then looked away after their lenses scanned Irene's face. "You said you could get me into the building," I said. "I did. You did not say the building would open its mouth for you. It opens for many people." "That is also not an answer." She stopped before the final security gate. Beyond it, the lobby rose 6 stories under a roof of clear glass. Morning light poured down, clean and merciless. No shadows lasted long in that place. Irene turned to me. "Foster does not like surprises," she said. "Do not give him one unless you are ready for everything after it." I crossed the ocean because my dead father told me to carry a sword into a city that wants to kill me. I think surprise has already joined us. For the first time that morning, something almost broke through her expression. Not a smile, not sadness, recognition. Then the gate opened. Inside, the tower was too quiet. People moved, but no one hurried. Their shoes made soft sounds on white stone. Screens hung in the air without visible wires. Maps of the city turned slowly above reception desks, each district marked in pale lines of traffic, heat, police activity, medical demand, civil mood. I stared at that phrase longer than I meant to. Irene noticed. "Predictive governance. Is that what you call watching people suffer before they know they're suffering?" "It is what they call it." "They?" She did not answer. We entered an elevator with no buttons. It rose fast enough to press silence into my ears. Through the glass wall, the city dropped away. Rooftops, rails, market streets, old temples, clinics, schools, all reduced to clean shapes under morning light. I saw the Red Lantern district from above. From here, it looked harmless. The elevator opened into a room with no reception desk, no guards, no visible doors except the one behind us. A long table stood near the windows. A man waited at the far end. Foster was not old, but he had learned to stand like time worked for him. His suit was dark. His hair was silver at the sides. His eyes were calm in a way I did not trust. Some people are calm because they have peace. Some are calm because they have already counted what everyone else is worth. "Ryu Hayabusa," he said. "Your father was a difficult man to protect. I did not move closer. He was not yours to protect." "No," Foster said. "But the city was." Irene stood beside the door now, not beside me. That small distance said more than she intended. Foster looked at the sword case. The dragon sword. I wondered if Ken had truly sent it away. He sent me away too. Yes, Foster said. That decision kept you alive. My hand tightened on the case handle. You speak like you were there. I was close enough. The light core pulsed inside the steel container in my bag. Foster's eyes moved to it immediately. So he had sensors, or he knew the feeling. You brought it here, he said. I brought it to the man Ken trusted before everything went wrong. A faint line appeared at the corner of his mouth. Walter always loved theatrical blame. Walter is bleeding in a clinic because your containment project has teeth. Foster walked to the window. Below him, the city stretched in all directions, too large for one man to love and too useful for one man not to control. Jashin was never a monster in the way frightened people needed it to be, he said. It is a buried intelligence system, older than our language for intelligence. It was built to collect emotional stress, forecast collapse, prevent disorder. By using pain, by studying pain. That sounds cleaner. Most necessary things do. I heard my father's voice in the dead recording. Foster has lost control. You lost control of it, I said. Foster turned back. No, Ken believed I did. And you believe? I believe containment is not enough anymore. Irene lowered her eyes. There it was, not confession, not exactly, but the shape of betrayal passing through a room too clean to hold it. Foster touched the table. A map appeared between us. Lines sank through the city into red and blue layers. At the lowest point, a dark circular mark waited beneath the central power spine. The first gate, he said. Walter's strip will bring you to it, but not through it. For that, you need access authority. Mine. And what do you want? The same thing your father wanted. To prevent Jackio from joining the Shadow Seal to Jashin during the Black Moon window. You forgot the part where you treat people like tools. Foster did not deny it. That is because people are tools, Ryu. So am I. So are you. The only moral question is what we are used to build. The room became very still. I thought of boys laughing in snow. My mother's empty room. Ken's silence. Walter on a clinic table. Irene's hand trembling when she thought no one saw. No, I said. That is your question. Foster studied me then, really studied me, and I understood why Ken had once trusted him. He was not stupid. He was not wild. He was not cruel in the easy way. He was worse. He was reasonable. Irene will escort you to the lower grid, he said. You will open the first gate, verify whether Jaquio's stolen trace has activated the shadow path, and return the light core to tower custody. No. Irene looked up. Foster did not. No? He repeated. I will go to the gate. I will verify what happened, but the light core stays with me. That object belongs under authority. My father disagreed. Your father died because he disagreed. The words struck harder than I let him see. For a moment, I wanted to ask him what he meant. Died. Vanished. Dead. Alive only in static. But Foster's face would not give me truth for free. I lifted the sword case slightly. Then consider me a family tradition. Silence held. Then Foster smiled without warmth. Very well. Keep it for now. Irene, take him through the South Service spine. Avoid the public grid. Jaquio's agents will already be listening for the light. Irene nodded. Her hand moved toward the door control. It trembled once. Small. Almost nothing. But I saw it. And in that clean white room, above a city built to measure every heartbeat except the ones that mattered, I understood that Irene was not simply guiding me into danger. She was returning to something that had already hurt her. The door opened. Cold air rose from the lower levels. I followed her out, carrying my father's sword, his unfinished message, and a light everyone wanted to own. The South Service spine did not belong to the tower's clean face. The elevator dropped past glass floors, quiet offices, and white security halls. Then the walls changed. Polished stone became raw concrete. The light turned yellow. Air vents coughed heat into the shaft, and the city's hidden machinery began speaking in low metal sounds. Irene stood beside me without looking up. A small receiver sat against the bone behind her ear. I had noticed it before, but now it blinked with Foster's signal. His voice came through faintly. Maintain route discipline. No deviation. Irene touched the receiver once. Understood. The elevator slowed. I looked at her reflection in the dark glass. Does he always speak to you like that? Only when he is being polite. The doors opened onto a maintenance level under the central district. Heat rolled in. The corridor ahead ran between power conduits thicker than old trees. Blue warning lights pulsed along the floor. Somewhere beyond the walls, electricity moved in heavy waves, feeding the towers, the cameras, the hospitals, the clubs, the homes, all of it. The city had a heartbeat. It was not human. Irene took out Walter's data strip and fitted it into a reader near the first locked gate. The screen rejected it twice, then accepted it with a tired beep. Walter's route still works, she said, for now. For now is often enough. We passed into the lower grid. The farther we went, the less the city pretended to be modern. Old brick arches appeared between the conduits. Temple stone pushed through the foundations. Pipes had been wrapped around carved pillars. Fiber cables ran across ancient symbols like black vines. Ken had walked through places like this. The thought came without warning. Not the Ken from my childhood memories. Not the father standing silent at the training yard. The man from the recording. The man who had known enemies were watching his blood. I wanted to reject that man. I also wanted to understand him. The light core pulsed inside my bag. Irene noticed the shift in my hand. Is it reacting? Yes. To what? I was hoping you knew. I know systems, not ghosts. A laugh almost left me. Almost. Then the floor shook. The lights snapped red. A warning siren began somewhere ahead, low and repeating. Hot wind pushed through the corridor, carrying the smell of burned insulation. Irene's receiver blinked. Foster's voice sharpened. Ignore the surge. Continue to gate access. Irene stopped. Ahead of us, a side passage had sealed halfway. On the other side, people were shouting. Not soldiers, not agents. Ordinary workers in orange maintenance jackets, trapped behind a fire door that had jammed during the power surge. A woman's voice cut through the alarm. There are 4 of us in here. Foster spoke again. Irene, continue. Civil response teams are being routed. The smoke thickened behind the broken door. No one was coming quickly enough. Irene stood still for 1 second. I knew that kind of stillness. It was the moment between obedience and shame. Then she turned away from the first gate route. Help me. That was all she said. Not an explanation, not permission. A choice. I set down the sword case, drew the dragon sword, and drove its edge into the manual release housing. Sparks jumped. Irene pulled a cable bundle free and worked fast, fingers steady now. The door rose a few inches, then stuck again. Inside, someone coughed hard. Again, she said. I cut deeper. The release snapped. Irene dropped to the floor and wedged both hands under the door. I caught the lower edge beside her. Heat bit into my palms through the gloves. We lifted. The first worker crawled through. Then a second. Then the woman who had shouted. She tried to thank Irene, but Irene was already looking past her. One more, she said. A boy, maybe 16, lay near the far wall with his leg pinned under a fallen panel. The smoke rolled lower. Foster's voice came through the receiver, cold and close. Leave him. That is an order. Irene pulled the receiver from behind her ear and crushed it under her boot. For the first time since I met her, she looked almost relieved. Hold the door, she told me. Then she went back in. The old anger in me waited for a reason to call her foolish. It did not find one. I held the door while the heat pressed down. My arms shook. The light core pulsed harder, beating against my side like a second heart. Irene dragged the boy free, one arm under his shoulders. The pinned panel scraped the floor as she pulled him clear. A security drone rounded the corner behind me. Then another, their lenses fixed on Irene. Not the workers. Her. Foster had seen enough. I shifted my grip, keeping the door raised with one shoulder, and drew the sword with my free hand. The first drone fired a restraint wire. I cut it before it reached her. The second dropped lower, projecting a warning seal across the corridor. Unauthorized deviation. I laughed once without humor. The words could have been written over my whole life. Irene got the boy through. The workers pulled him away. I let the door fall between them and the smoke. The drones advanced. Irene picked up my sword case and tossed it to me. We are out of time. We? She met my eyes. Yes. That one word changed more than it should have. We ran. Behind us, the drones opened fire with electric rounds that struck the walls and burst into white nets of light. We crossed a maintenance bridge above a pit full of transformers. Heat rose in waves. Industrial platforms moved slowly below us, carrying machine parts through orange glow. The masked enemies appeared at the far end of the bridge. Crescent marks, curved blades, waiting. Jacchio's people had found the light. Foster's drones behind us. Hunters ahead. For a moment, the path was clean in its cruelty. Irene raised her pistol, but I touched her arm. Low route. She looked down. Below the bridge, a moving service platform passed between towers of humming equipment. Too far for most people. Not too far. I jumped first. The air tore upward with heat. I hit the platform hard, rolled, and came up on one knee. Irene landed beside me a breath later, less graceful but alive. Above us, drones and hunters collided into the same narrow bridge, neither side happy to find the other. The platform carried us into a maintenance shaft lined with old stone. The noise fell away. Only the machine hum remained. Irene leaned against the wall, catching her breath. Her hair had come loose near her face. There was soot along one cheek. You disobeyed him, I said. I heard myself do it. Was it worth it? She looked back toward the trapped workers, though we could no longer see them. Yes. That answer did not sound like duty. It sounded like someone remembering she still had a soul. The data strip glowed in her hand. It pointed down. We followed it through a narrow passage where the heat faded and the air grew heavy with old mineral cold. The cables ended first, then the pipes. Then the floor changed from metal grating to stone worn smooth by feet that had died centuries before the towers were built. At the end of the passage stood a sealed temple door. No corporate marks, no warning labels, only carved stone, dark and patient, hidden beneath the city's power spine. The light core became warm enough to feel through the steel container. My message chip pulsed once, then went still. I lifted my hand toward the door. Near the center, beneath dust and cable scars, someone had carved the Hayabusa crest. Not recently, not as a sign for strangers, as a promise left for blood. My throat tightened before I could stop it. Irene stood beside me, quiet now. For once, she did not ask what it meant. I placed my palm against the mark my father had touched before me, and deep inside the door, something ancient began to unlock. The door did not open like a machine. It remembered. Stone shifted behind stone. Deep locks turned with slow pressure, not gears exactly, not magnets, not anything clean enough to belong to Foster's tower. The Hayabusa crest warmed under my palm, and for a breath I felt another hand there before mine. Larger. Calloused. My father's. Then the door exhaled. Humid air rolled out from the dark, carrying the smell of wet stone, old metal, and something almost green. It did not belong beneath the city. It smelled like a forest after rain, buried so long it had become a memory instead of a place. Irene stood beside me with her pistol low. You opened it, she said. No, I said. It let me in. The light core pulsed inside the steel container. The temple answered with a low sound that moved through my chest before I heard it. Far above, the city's power spine hummed. Down here, something older hummed back. We stepped through. The passage beyond the door sloped downward. Ancient stone blocks formed the walls, but cables had been threaded through cracks and drilled into carved faces. Small lanterns hung in alcoves, though no flame burned inside them. Each one held a pale electric glow, soft as trapped moonlight. The city had not built this place. The city had only wounded it. Walter's data strip glowed in Irene's hand, drawing a thin path across the air. The path moved like a living thing, turning around collapsed columns and broken sensor posts. This should lead to the first memory seal, she said. You knew about memory seals? I knew Foster used the phrase. I never saw one. And he sent us down here anyway. He sent you, she said. I came because I chose to. I looked at her. She did not look away this time. That made the silence harder. We moved deeper. Water ran somewhere under the floor. The air grew warmer, then cold again, as if the temple could not decide whether it was alive or dead. On the walls, old carvings showed figures carrying two stones, one bright, one dark. Later carvings had been covered by corporate markings, scanning labels, warning codes, and numbers written by people who thought naming a thing meant owning it. The light core grew heavier in my bag. My glove stayed still. That worried me. The message chip had been my last piece of Ken's voice. Now it felt like a closed eye. At the end of the passage, the temple opened into a circular chamber. The ceiling disappeared into darkness. In the center stood a stone basin filled with black water. Above it floated a ring of broken metal turning slowly without sound. Irene raised the data strip. The strip dimmed. Then the light core answered. The steel container clicked open by itself. Pale light spilled across the chamber and touched the black water. The surface did not ripple, it brightened from underneath. A voice came from the basin, not loud, not clear, but I knew it before the words formed. Ryu. My body forgot the years. The chamber fell away. I was a child again, standing in the narrow hall of a house that no longer existed. Morning light came through paper screens. My mother's room was empty, not cleaned, not ready. Empty in the cruel way a room becomes when everyone is afraid to touch what grief has left behind. My father knelt in front of me. Ken Hayabusa looked younger than the man in the recording. His eyes were red from not sleeping, but his hands were steady as he tied the cloth strap on my small travel bag. I remembered that, hating it. Remembered he going. The child I had been asked. Ken did not answer quickly enough. That was the part I had kept all my life. The pause, the silence where love should have been easy. You will train with Master Taku, Ken said at last, in the mountains. For how long? His fingers stopped on the strap. Outside the memory in the temple, I felt Irene beside me, but I could not turn to her. The child said, "Are you coming?" Ken closed his eyes. I had built my whole hatred around that moment. Because he did not say yes, because he did not touch my face, because he looked for 1 second like staying near me hurt too much. Then the memory shifted, not forward, sideways. The room darkened. Voices came from outside the house, not villagers, men speaking through encrypted masks. My father stood alone beyond the screen, sword in hand, listening. One voice said, "The boy remains leverage." Another said, "If Hayabusa resists, take the child." The child version of me did not hear that. I had never heard that. My father did. Ken turned back toward the hall, and the look on his face was not rejection. It was terror held behind discipline. He came to me again. He knelt. His hand rose toward my shoulder, then stopped. The memory shook. Static cut through the walls. "No," I whispered. The black water flashed white. Ken's mouth moved, but no sound came through. "Tell him." The same broken shape as the recording. "Tell him." The chamber screamed with interference. The image tore apart before the reason could finish. I stood in the temple again with my hand half raised toward nothing. My throat hurt. For years I had remembered only the silence. Now the silence had another shadow behind it. Irene did not speak at first. That was the kindness I needed and did not know how to ask for. When she finally said my name, she said it softly. "Ryu." I closed the light core container by hand. My fingers were not steady. "He knew," I said. She waited. He knew they would come for me. The words should have made me forgive him. They did not. They only made the wound wider, because now my anger had to make room for his fear. A sound came from the upper dark. Stone dust fell into the basin. I drew the dragon sword before the first shadow landed. He came down without hurry, cloak folding around him like black wings. His armor was lighter than the crescent hunters, marked with thin red lines that pulsed under the surface. His mask was not smooth. It was shaped like a face that had forgotten mercy. He carried no gun, only a long blade curved at the end, held low. Irene aimed at him. He did not look at her. His attention stayed on me. "So," he said, voice calm through the mask, "Ken Hayabusa's abandoned son finally found the room where excuses are buried." The words struck the place the memory had just opened. I stepped between him and Irene. "You know my father?" The warrior tilted his head. "I know what he became." The temple lights dimmed. Around us, the black water began to tremble. The elite warrior raised his blade, and somewhere beneath the city, a deeper machine thunder answered him. The warrior attacked before the black water stopped trembling. He crossed the chamber with no shout, no wasted breath, only the quiet certainty of a man who had already measured the distance between my heart and his blade. His weapon came low, then high, changing direction in the space between two beats. I met it with the dragon sword. The sound struck the chamber walls and came back changed. Not an echo, an answer. The ring of broken metal above the basins spun faster. Pale light moved across the stone floor in sharp pieces. Irene stepped to my left, pistol raised, but the warrior's blade shifted toward her before she fired. I cut across his line. He smiled behind the mask. I could hear it. "Protecting her already? Talking already?" He struck again. This time I felt his strength. Not brute force. Discipline. His blade did not push mine away. It asked where I would go and arrived there first. My father had taught me that kind of fighting. The thought unsettled me. The warrior saw it. "Ken taught you enough to survive," he said, "not enough to understand him." I turned his blade aside and drove my shoulder into his chest. He slid back over the wet stone, boots cutting through the thin water around the basin. "Then explain," I said. "You do not want explanation. You want a grave clean enough to hate." His words found the fresh wound from the memory seal. I moved too fast. Anger gave him my rhythm. He caught my next strike on the curve of his blade, twisted, and struck the sword case at my side. The impact drove me into a carved pillar. Pain flashed through my ribs, brief and bright. Irene fired. The shot struck his shoulder armor and threw sparks across the dark water. He turned toward her. I was already moving. The dragon sword cut between them, forcing him back. His blade kissed my sleeve and opened the fabric, but not the skin beneath. "Ryu," Irene said. "I know." But I did not know. Not really. The chamber lights dimmed again, and the basin filled with broken images. My father kneeling in the hall, men beyond the paper screen, my child self waiting for a word that never came. The warrior stepped through those images as if he belonged inside them. "They told you he died," he said. "Foster, Walter, the woman beside you, the city record, all clean words for frightened people." I heard Irene inhale. She did not deny it. The floor under me seemed to shift. I kept the sword raised because if I lowered it, I did not know what my hands would do. "What are you saying?" The warrior came close enough that I could see the red lines under his mask pulse like veins of light. "I am saying your father still breathes." The chamber became silent. Even the machine thunder seemed to pull back. Ken's name moved inside me, but no sound came out. "Still breathes." The words did not enter me gently. They struck like a door thrown open onto a room I had spent years refusing to visit. Irene's voice was low. "Ryu, you knew?" I asked her. "No." There was fear in the answer. Not fear of me. Fear of what the truth had just done. The warrior turned his blade once, slow and elegant. "Ken Hayabusa lives under Jakio's hand, bound into the control lattice, a living key with enough memory left to suffer and enough obedience left to serve." My grip tightened until my fingers hurt. "You lie." "I do not need to. Your pain works better when fed with truth." He attacked again. This time I barely met him. My body moved from training, but my mind had fallen somewhere behind me. Ken alive, Ken controlled, Ken used. Every year of hatred rearranged itself too quickly to survive. If he was alive, then I had not come to bury him. If he was alive, then revenge was a childish map drawn over a world I did not understand. The warrior's blade came close to my throat. Irene fired at the floor between us. The stone burst with white dust. The break in rhythm saved me. I stepped back, breathed once, and heard my father's voice from years ago. When anger moves first, the enemy has already touched you. I had hated that lesson too. Now I used it. The next time the warrior struck, I did not answer his blade. I answered his body. Shoulder, foot, breath. The tiny lift before he changed direction. I let him think I had slowed. Then I moved inside the curve of his weapon. The dragon sword stopped against the side of his neck, not cutting, ending the argument. Irene kept her pistol on him. The warrior held still. You were trained by Ken, I said. He said nothing. You move like someone who studied him too closely. At last he gave a small laugh. It was not the thief's laugh from the tunnel. This one was older, colder, tired of its own cruelty. Studied, failed, rebuilt, all of us become useful eventually. To Jacchio, to the future. That sounds like Foster. Foster wants control with a conscience. Jacchio removed the unnecessary part. I pressed the blade slightly closer. Where is my father? The red lines under his armor pulsed brighter. Above the second gate, below the eclipse engine, in the tower that pretends to be a cathedral. You will reach him only after you stop calling this revenge. The words hurt because they were true. I wanted to reject them. Instead, I asked, why tell me? Because Jacchio wants you whole enough to break properly. The basin behind us turned black again. Then every lantern in the chamber went out. Irene shouted my name. The warrior vanished into the dark with a snap of cable and smoke. I cut once, but hit only air. A hidden lift screamed somewhere above, carrying him away through the temple shaft. Then the chamber began to collapse. Not all at once. The old place did not die dramatically. It failed like a body losing strength. Stone cracked, water drained from the basin. The metal ring fell and struck the floor hard enough to split. Irene grabbed the light core container before it slid into the opening water. This way, she said. I did not move. Ken was alive. The sentence stood in front of me like another enemy. Irene came back and took my arm, not gently, not like comfort, like someone keeping me attached to the world. Ryu, we have to leave. My father is alive. Yes. I hated him. I know. He was alive. I know. The floor broke near the basin and hot air rushed up from below. Her hand tightened. You can fall apart in the tunnel, she said, not here. That reached me. Maybe because it sounded too practical to be pity. I lifted the dragon sword and followed her through a side passage opening behind the broken seal chamber. The data strip in her hand flickered, then changed direction, drawing a path toward an old transit exit Walter had not marked in full. We ran through stone corridors, shaking themselves awake. Temple carvings blurred beside corporate cables. A masked body moved in one side hall, then withdrew when the ceiling cracked between us. Far ahead, a service light glowed blue. My ribs ached where I had struck the pillar. The pain helped. It gave the world edges. We reached an old transit tunnel where dead tracks curved toward the lower city. Cool air moved through it, carrying the smell of rust and distant rainwater. Only then did my legs fail. I caught the wall with one hand, sword point scraping the ground. My breath came too hard, too uneven. I had faced blades, drones, hunters, and memory, but one living truth had cut deeper than all of them. Ken was alive, and somewhere inside Jacchio's tower, my father was suffering in a cage built from the same silence I had mistaken for abandonment. Irene stood beside me in the blue service light. She did not touch me this time. She only stayed. That was worse somehow. Better, too. After a long moment, the message chip in my glove pulsed once. Not a command. Not a voice. Just proof that something unfinished was still calling me forward. I closed my hand around it. I came here for a dead man, I said. My voice sounded unfamiliar. Irene looked toward the tunnel ahead. No, she said quietly. You came here for your father. The old transit lines stretched into darkness, and for the first time since I entered the city, revenge no longer knew the way.